The subject is how should human beings live in this world? Human beings have a fully reflected consciousness which makes them capable of independent action and also of distinguishing between good and bad. Good and bad is a relative idea. What is good and what is bad has to be determined. The purpose of the qualified supreme entity Saguna Brahma in bringing about the creation is to liberate every unit beings and make it emancipated like itself. It is only with this intention that in the last stage of the evolutionary movement from crude to subtle, human beings representing a few units only appear with a fully reflected unit consciousness. The influence of Prakriti on the unit consciousness decreases with its advance towards the subtle, as we find that the unit consciousness in human beings is under a lesser influence of Prakriti than the unit consciousness in animals. This decrease in the influence of Prakriti over unit consciousness is obviously at the mercy of Saguna Brahma. The qualified supreme entity Saguna Brahma and Prakriti must have entered into an alliance at the very beginning of creation for this to happen. Otherwise, Prakriti, whose very nature is to qualify Purusha as much as possible, would not release Purusha from her influence. In the phase of creation where the movement is from crude to subtle, it is found that Prakriti releases consciousness, Purusha, from her bondage at her own will. Yet the unit consciousness remains under bondage because the movement of the creation from crude to subtle does not come to an end. If in this subjugated position any conscious entity acts independently, it is the nature of Prakriti to punish it. As a result of punishment, the further evolutionary movement of unit consciousness towards subtlety is temporarily affected. In the creation, it is observed that the influence of Prakriti is less, where the reflection of consciousness is clearer. If the unit consciousness could expand and enlarge the reflection of consciousness, it would be increasing its speed towards subtlety, as the influence of Prakriti on it would be decreased. It would then be possible for unit consciousness to get back to complete subtlety quickly. Therefore, good deeds are those which enlarge the reflection of consciousness without leading one to go against the laws of Prakriti. Following the laws of Prakriti and working according to her dictates will eliminate the suffering of the consequences of actions, karmafal, while enlarging the density of reflection of consciousness will diminish the hold of Prakriti. This enables one to go back to the supreme rank very quickly. Actions which makes one follow the laws of Prakriti and also increase the density of reflection of consciousness are called Uttam Karma, ideal actions, and are also called SVA'DHYA'YA, which is associated with Vairagya and Vivek. Vairagya is commonly understood to mean retiring from the world and leading a life of strict self-denial by practicing excessive austerity. Vairagya does not mean this. It does not make one a recluse. It only means to attempt to understand the proper use of things and to use them correctly, of course, without working under the control of the crude objects of mind only. For example, alcohol is an intoxicant which is harmful for both body and mind, and hence the use of alcohol as an intoxicant is to be given up. doctors prescribe alcohol in medicine for various diseases, and the intoxicant alcohol then becomes a medicine which relieves the patients of their suffering. Thus, the same alcohol, through difference in its use, changes its character from a harmful intoxicant to useful medicine. The use of alcohol as a medicine is its proper use, and anyone using it for this purpose does not place himself under the dominant influence of alcohol. This right use of a thing is vairagya. Right use of anything within the idea of vairagya does not make one's mind a slave to a constant longing for the object. One becomes indifferent to it. By developing indifference or not being constantly attracted by crude things, one's mind becomes subtle. Mind's movement towards subtlety means a decrease in an influence of Prakriti over it, and that is an advance towards liberation, mukti. As liberation is only possible when one is released from the influence of Prakriti. Discrimination between good and evil is vivek. To consider the use of alcohol as an intoxicant to be evil and its use as a medicine to be good is vivek. The same thing, by change in its use, can become good or evil, and discrimination between the two is vivek. It is with discrimination, vivek, only that mind can determine the goodness or evil in a thing or in its uses. Vivek is therefore necessary for following vairagya, and vairagya is a great contributory factor in achieving emancipation or mukti. Thus, vairagya and vivek alone are good deeds or vidya maya. Evil deeds or avidya maya are just the opposite of these. Actions which dim the reflection of consciousness also lead one to go against the laws of Prakriti are evil deeds. Evolution of unit consciousness only means that the reflection of consciousness becomes clearer and greater in density because of the mind becoming more subtle. This would be possible only when the speed of movement towards subtlety is increased. As then, alone will mind tend to become more subtle. The more the mind is absorbed in crude objects, the more unit consciousness is dragged backwards, because the reflection of consciousness becomes dimmer with greater expression of Prakriti. Mind being absorbed in crudeness remains more under the influence of Prakriti, with the result that the onward march of unit consciousness is halted. Then actions that lead one to go against the laws of Prakriti also halt the evolutionary march towards subtlety, because the consequences of the punishment inflicted by Prakriti for defying her have to be suffered before progressing further, and unit consciousness is debarred for the time from gaining its subtlety. Actions which draw mind to crude objects and lead one to act against the laws of Prakriti are evil or avidya maya. Avidya maya is the creator of the SHRII, 6 enemies, and the Ashtapas, 8 fetters. Kam, that is longing for earthly objects; Krodh, that is anger; Lobh, that is avarice; Moh, that is attraction; Mada, that is vanity; and Matsarya, that is envy, are the 6 enemies, while Bhaya or fear, Lajja or shame, Ghrina or hatred, Shanka or doubt, Kula or high descent, Shila or complex of culture, Mana, vanity, and Jugupsa, backbiting, are the 8 fetters. Sat means six and Ripu means enemies. These six faculties in human beings are termed as enemies, as they absorb the mind in crudeness and stop its march towards the subtle. The supreme rank of unit consciousness is subtle, and anything which holds it back from reaching the supreme rank is its enemy. These six faculties are therefore termed as six enemies. Astpas means the eight fetters. Anyone bound by fetters will lose his or her capacity of movement. In the creation we find the movement of human beings is from the crude to the subtle. That is, human beings have to move towards the subtle, but by their learning towards the eight fetters such as Lajja, Bhaya and Grina, they get absorbed in crude things only, and their progress towards the subtle is stopped. To follow Vidya Maya would be a good deed, while to follow Vidya Maya would be an evil one. Vidya Maya gradually leads one to the subtle, and Avidya Maya stops one's progress towards the subtle. According to the rule of creation, human movement is towards the subtle, and everyone will have to follow Vidya Maya so that their movement towards the subtle is accelerated and one gets back to the supreme rank quickly. Those who follow Vidya Maya can be put into four categories. First, those who follow the laws of Prakriti and make an effort for the progress of unit consciousness, they are the good people. Second, those who follow the laws of Prakriti but are indifferent to making efforts for the progress of unit consciousness. Third, those who do not follow the laws of Prakriti and are indifferent to making efforts for the progress of unit consciousness. These are called the low. Fourth, those who do not follow the laws of Prakriti and also become the cause of the degradation of their unit consciousness, such as these are lower than the lowest. The purpose of the qualified supreme entity Sagun Brahma in creating human beings is to make them follow its course towards the subtle so as to take them back to the supreme rank. This forms the nature, dharma of human beings. To get back to the supreme rank, effort for the elevation of unit consciousness is necessary. And actions should also be in keeping with the laws of Prakriti so that she does not create obstacles to progress. Hence, the people of the first category, that is, good people, are natural, Prakrit Manushya, as they work according to their nature, dharma, and they alone serve the purpose for which the qualified supreme entity Sagun Brahma made them. Animals also follow Prakriti, but due to the absence of clear reflection of consciousness, they are not able to make any effort for the elevation of their consciousness. Persons of the second category who only follow the laws of Prakriti are in no way different from animals. They make no use of a fully reflected unit consciousness in them. They can hence be called nothing better than beasts in gaze of humans. Those in the third and fourth categories are really lower than the beasts. Beasts follow the laws of Prakriti and do not make any effort for the elevation of unit consciousness, as it is not clearly reflected in them. Being dependent entirely on Prakriti for all their actions, animals with the passage of time develop a clearly reflected unit consciousness. While the low and the lowest of people in the third and fourth categories make no use of the fully reflected unit consciousness in themselves and work against the laws of Prakriti. The lowest not only work against the laws of Prakriti but also bring about further degeneration in the reflection of unit consciousness through their actions. These two are not only beasts in human form but ever meaner than the beasts.